Larry, thank you for dressing up today. I know that as a retiree, that that it's hard to put
This is one
under.
of my nicer T-shirts. I'm actually kind of hurt.
I'm sorry. You're right. It is one of your
Thank
nicer
you.
T-shirts, and I've seen a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that your wife will be very pleased when
Oh
she
yeah.
sees
Oh, she's
this
going to
on
be
video.
thrilled. Yeah. I should have brought my Mark Sublette Appreciation Week shirt you gave me.
Or one of my hats. Yeah.
One of your hats?
Do you
No,
have
I don't
one?
have. No.
You get a hat.
Cool.
Today, you actually get a medicine
All
man
right.
guy
This
hat.
is my lucky day.
And I won't even make you pay for it.
Oh, well, I'll pay eventually.
You're paying right now.
Yeah, right. Of course.
So we have Larry Cansler today on the
Sure.
Art Dealer Diaries, and Larry's you're an interesting cat. I got to tell you.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, no, and on many levels, from an art standpoint, from a music standpoint, flying. I mean, when you think of a Renaissance man, you're kind of fit that bill, and I think people will enjoy hearing some of the stuff that I was shocked when I first met you in the gym.
Right.
Well, I wasn't so shocked that you were in the gym, but that you had such an interesting career. Maybe you can just tell me the start. I mean, it starts in Texas, right?
Yeah, I'm originally from Texas, a little place called Deer Park, close to the oil refineries around Houston. So I grew up in that environment.
Thus
And,
the sound of your voice.
yeah, that howdy,
Yeah.
that sort of thing sort of creeps
like it.
in. You
Yeah,
know,
that's good.
you should hear it after a couple of beers. It's really there. You know, but I started playing the accordion when I was 8 years old, and just fell in love with it. And I was always around airplanes. I was always, hung up on that sort of thing, and just had a great childhood. But really got more and more into music as years went by. So
Why the accordion, actually? I mean, just curious.
my
It's such an odd
mother went to high school with an accordion player who
Uh-huh.
ended up being in a group called, what was it? The Riders of the Purple Sage, and they were Gene Autry's band.
Oh, I know the Riders of the Purple Sage.
So
I've heard them.
she just thought that was the coolest thing ever, and she convinced me that he was a cowboy.
Uh-huh.
And being a Texan, a cowboy's a big deal for a young guy.
Right.
So I went, wow, if cowboys play the accordion, so can I. So
Right.
that's what happened.
And so when you went to college in Canyon,
No,
At,
North Texas. up
North
in
Texas,
Denton,
Denton,
Texas.
Texas.
Yeah.
and were you you're a music major?
Right.
Specifically, though, your interest was composition, right?
Composition, basically jazz. I got into jazz in my early teens. I started listening to, when everybody was listening to Elvis, I was listening to Miles Davis and
Wow.
Dave Brubeck and Stan Kenton, who I later wrote for. And so I was already into that, and I could have cared less about pop music. So North Texas.
This was early '62.
Late 50s.
Oh, wow.
I went to North.
You are old.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting older every minute. And I started North Texas in September of 1958.
Yeah.
So
And so you got a degree in composition.
I never graduated. I just went there and took all the music courses I could and left. So.
Well, you left and you did a military stint because it was the time, right?
Well,
Not
yeah,
that
I
long.
went in. I joined the Army Reserves.
Right.
And,
Because that was 64-ish?
No, more like 62.
Oh,
I
even earlier.
think.
Yeah.
It's before Vietnam.
Yep.
And
So you finished, so you go to school, you get basically a degree, maybe not the actual one, but you learned all you could about composition, which they must have thought was odd, a little bit odd what you wanted to do, because you wanted to go to California, right?
yeah, I early on wanted to. I was just taken by showbiz, and I just loved the idea of movies and television, and also, by this time I was really serious about writing jazz, and at North Texas, not only did we have an excellent jazz department, and at the time it was just about the only one in the country, but we had a magnificent composition teacher, Dr. Samuel Adler, who ended up being the composition teacher at Juilliard.
Wow.
So he got me into the classical side. And so I was already writing for brass and saxophones, but he got me into woodwinds and strings, and I started studying counterpoint and traditional orchestration, and that just opened up a whole world for me. So,
One teacher. It's amazing, I think, that whether it's a music teacher or an art teacher, somebody that really mentors you can make a huge difference. Sounds
Oh,
like it
absolutely.
did in
They
this
can
case.
open the door sometime, and that's what I was very fortunate. In fact, my first accordion teacher was one of the greatest. He and his partner, his name was Bill Palmer,
Uh-huh.
and his partner was Bill Hughes, and they wrote the Palmer-Hughes accordion method, which is all over the world.
One of my
So-
favorites.
Oh,
actually.
I'm sure everybody. But so when I was in high school, I was already studying college level music theory because of these. Both these guys were professors at the University of Houston as well. So I really had a break there.
And so you took that training,
Yeah.
and then you go and you did your military stint, and then you
Right.
went directly out to L.A.
Yeah, on and off. I went on the road briefly with a few bands. I did write a couple of things for Stan Kenton. Then I was on the road with the Cy Zentner Orchestra, but just started working my way out to Los Angeles because that was my goal, was to get in the studios.
And what did you want to do there when you got to L.A.? What was your goal?
Just wanted to write.
Did you? I bet
Conduct
did you
and
like say,
compose.
"Oh, I'm going to do television or commercials"?
Well, at
or-
that point, you're just more concerned with, first of all, making a living.
Yeah,
It's a
food.
rough town.
Yeah.
It's hard,
Yeah,
you know.
it's
So
very
the musicians used to say it's a 7-year town. I beat it by 1 year. I started eating after 6. So
And but you also worked for you did some interesting stuff with like Michael Jackson, right?
well, Michael Jackson, but my first break in a sense in L.A. was I ran into a friend of mine from Houston, a bass player named Kenny Rogers.
Oh,
And he had just formed, along with Terry Williams, had formed the First Edition. And by this time, I had my first big band, and we were working weekly at a jazz club in North Hollywood called Dante's. And we had all kind of people coming in all the
bet.
time to see the band. And Kenny and I kind of hooked up again. And pretty soon they needed a musical director, and they had a television series, and I became the guy. So.
Did they know, or did he know that he could sing at that time if he was a bass player, Kenny?
Oh, he was already singing.
Yeah,
he
he
was. He was in the New Christie Minstrels, and then they formed the first. The First Edition came out of the Christie Minstrels, and so they had already. They were working with the Smothers Brothers, who I also worked with.
Right.
And their manager was Ken Cragen, who became a friend, and I sort of got involved in all of that sort of thing. And I did some arranging for the original Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour as well. So
What was that like?
that was exciting. It was great.
They were interesting guys.
Oh,
right?
they were very- and
super
they're
smart, super
Very
funny, right?
smart and a lot of fun, and on the edge of comedy and politics and all kind of stuff. It was a pretty heady time.
Yeah, I mean, what was that like? I mean, they were censored a lot on
Well,
TV,
they were
right?
censored finally off TV.
Yeah, right.
CBS just dumped them,
Yeah.
and they were the #1 show in the country, and they dumped them.
Oh my God.
That was pressure from the Nixon White House.
Wow.
So that's very interesting. And I mean, I was, Mason Williams was one of the writers on the show, and Steve Martin was a writer on the show.
Wow.
This was amazing.
Yeah.
Looking back now, I go, my God, I was right in the middle of all kind of stuff like that. So it's pretty exciting.
And did that lead to other things? Like you work with Jackson, right? Michael
Well,
Jackson?
yeah, the Jackson thing came a few years later. I was still doing some stuff with Kenny and a lot of stuff in the studio.
Right.
But I'd forgotten what TV show I did, but the director was a guy named Marty Pacetta, who after that directed the Oscar shows.
Oh, yeah.
And the Jacksons were guests on it, and they were going to have a show in Vegas. It was going to be their first show, and they needed a musical director and an arranger.
Right.
And he suggested me, and so I met him, and we hit it off, and I started writing for them and conducted their show at the MGM Grand. And their little sister, Janet, was 7 years old, and I was conducting the first night she was on stage. So
Very first night ever?
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
that like?
that was great. Of course, I was busy conducting.
Yeah, no,
and
you were
never
actually working.
yeah.
I was like,
Say, oh, is there somebody out there? Oh, yeah.
And was she great then?
Oh,
at
yeah.
7?
Oh, she was a natural.
7.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. And Michael would have been how old? About that time?
Michael was 16 or 17
Yeah.
about that time.
And was already very well polished. I would
Oh,
assume.
yeah. He was an amazingly smart guy. I mean, and the whole group was. I love working with them. They were very professional. And they took everything very seriously, but they were still kids, too.
Right.
So we would hang out, and, Tito and I flew model airplanes, so we had all kind of fun stuff like that.
Which is your other love, and we'll get into that.
Oh, yes.
'cause I
Yeah,
know
I'm still...
you ran air shows. And
Yep. I
well, maybe
produced
this is as good as a time as any. I mean, just because you have this long history as a musician, then as a pilot, and then your next career, which you're doing now, is art. So what was the whole flying thing? I mean, you ran air shows, right?
Well, yeah. As I said, I grew up in love with airplanes, and when I was a kid, I wanted to be a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
And I was about 12 years old, and I found out because of my eyes, there's no way I could fly in the military.
Right.
So by that time, I had kind of put that energy into music, so that was cool. But I remember in L.A., like I said, it was really hard. I mean, I was literally hungry a lot. For me to have the rent and a phone and a car at the same time was just unheard of. I just usually would have my choice of two,
right.
you know. So I remember I was about ready to say, hell with it all, and go back to college and get my degree.
Right.
And I remember one night just making a deal with myself. I said, look, you always wanted to be a pilot.
Right.
Why don't you stick it out one more year,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't make it, go back and get your degree. But if you do make it, get your pilot's license. So a few months later, I was working with the first edition, and we had some hit records, and I was doing well. I was driving by Santa Monica Airport, and I saw the sign up, and it said, learn to fly. My car just by itself pulled into, you know.
Oh, wow.
So I walk in, and I'm a rock star now with, I have hair down to my shoulders and
Right.
pink sunglasses. And I walked in and said,
And you're working with the first edition.
yeah, exactly. So I walked in, and the chief instructor was there, and I said, I want to learn to fly. And he said, looks like you're flying already, baby. And I went, oh, this is going to be harder than I thought. But I got my license and flew for years.
Yeah, and that was your treat for making it as a musician.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And something I just had to get my pilot's license, or my life wouldn't have been complete.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how that works? Yeah, I feel that way about writing. I don't know why.
Yeah, there's things that you're just supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how important it is to anyone else.
That's
If
right.
it's that important to me, you have to do it.
Yeah, and was that relatively easy to learn how to fly?
It wasn't as easy as I thought it was.
Uh-huh.
I kind of tricked myself because I'm sort of a cornucopia of useless aviation knowledge.
Yeah.
I figured that would translate into my flying skills. I went, oh, this is harder
It's
than I
different.
thought.
Knowledge is more than that. You got to have skill set.
Yeah,
right?
and you have to practice. I should have known that as a musician. But no, I finally got to it. I felt really comfortable, and I flew gliders and got a multi-engine rating, and then I got into aerobatics. And I remember flying out to Mojave Airport one day. Pilots have a thing called $200 hamburgers.
Mm-hmm.
You go rent a plane, fly out to some little airport, eat a hamburger, and fly back. And it's like $200 for lunch.
It's just the doing the flying, right?
Yeah,
That's
because
the
you
thing.
want to do your cross country.
And you
all
need a
that.
goal. The goal's the hamburger.
Absolutely, So I landed at Mojave Airport, and I was looking around, and there was this hangar open, and I saw this insane-looking blue airplane.
Right.
It looked like a giant surfboard, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and so I just walked in the hangar, and this kind of long, lanky pilot walked over and introduced himself, and it was Dick Rutan, and the airplane was the Voyager that his brother Bert designed, and he and Gina Yeager flew it around the world.
Had they flown it at that point?
No, they were still in the process of building it. So
Right.
I got excited about it and used
sure.
to go out and help. And then they asked me to come do some of the PR work. And then I wrote a symphony piece for them for the New American Orchestra that Scott Carpenter, the astronaut,
Wow.
did the narration for that John Stewart wrote.
Oh, wow.
And so I, because of me being on television or radio during the 2 weeks that they were in the air,
Right.
a couple of air shows called me up and asked if I would like to announce.
Right.
And for me, that was a dream come true,
Yeah.
too. I went, wow, the best seat in the house,
Right.
So,
And you're still making music.
oh, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
still writing and doing all
being very
that. But then
effective.
on the weekends, I would go out and do my air shows.
Yeah. And which was more fun? If you maybe you can't even correlate to fun, but it seems like there's, to me, writing music, being a conductor, and then doing a production where you're talking about the airplanes are two different skill sets. Were they equally fun?
Well, yeah, I never thought of it like that because I was winging it the whole time.
Literally.
You know, when you're announcing an air show, you don't have a script.
Right.
And I went, well, I started playing jazz years ago, and you learn to improvise. And
Yeah.
years later, when I was composing, I realized that composing is improvising just a whole lot slower.
Right.
So for me, I just had the same kind of mindset. I kind of knew who was going to be flying and what they were going to be flying, and I would just.
And you just let the beat of the airplanes and the crowd kind of tell you what to say and how to say it.
Yeah,
and
I just kind of played along with it, and that was a very exciting time. Got to fly with some really good pilots, Patty Wagstaff and Sean Tucker and Wayne Hanley, and a lot of the shows we had the Blue Angels, and so that's pretty cool stuff. And for a guy who wanted to be a fighter pilot,
right? Did you ever get to go up in any of those things?
Never got a chance to fly with any of the jets, but I flew with all of the aerobatic pilots and flew in their airplanes.
My God,
that was cool.
Yeah, I can't even imagine doing those kind of loops and things.
Well, you get used to them.
To the G's? And
I went through a school at Santa Paula Airport called what was it called? The Pit Stop. Because they had Pit Special. That's a little biplane.
Right.
And I know the first hour, I'd never been so sick in my life. I was thinking of things that I had for lunch in the third grade. You know. So after that, you get used to it. You build up your tolerance, and you have to, as you know from your Navy experience, you have to tighten your stomach and keep the blood from coming in. Yeah, and so
I figured out how to do that.
I just got so tired of doing that at the bottom of one of the loops, my instructor was sitting behind me. I decided not to tighten my stomach.
Yeah.
And he just saw my head slide to the side of the canopy, and I popped my head up, and I remember him saying, "Did you enjoy your nap?"
Yeah, and for those who don't know, you're pulling G's, so you've got to increase your pressure to your brain. And
because all the blood leaves your brain, and you're taking a nap, whether you like it or not.
Valsalva maneuver, and it does. You took a little nap.
Yeah.
Not always the best thing to do.
Yeah, we call it G-lock, G-loss of consciousness.
Yeah, that's right. That is exactly what that is.
Yeah.
So you did aerobatics, which is super dangerous, right? I mean, that is like one of the more dangerous sports out there, right?
I was pretty well trained, and I made sure I had a lot of altitude.
A few pilots that have died, I bet.
I lost some dear friends in air shows. I lost way too many friends.
Yeah.
In fact, I won't go to an air show now.
Yeah, I understand that.
It's just, it just brings back bad memories.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I watched one go down on an air show.
At El Toro.
At El Toro, right in front of me. And it's when you see something like that, you remember it. I haven't gone to one since either.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, you're having a beer with somebody, and the next day they're no longer here.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, yeah.
Well, on that
happy note, yes.
One of the things I found very interesting is that you had a great hit song, one of my favorites.
Yes.
And Wildfire.
Wildfire.
And just kind of tell it, what's that like to have a real hit? That's like a major hit.
Well, I have to go in the history of it. One of the first groups that I wrote for when I got to Hollywood was the Letterman.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys, Tony Butala, had a guy that he worked with, his publishing company called Bob Todd.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Todd, they split up for some reason, and Bob started working at Screen Gems.
Mm-hmm.
And one day he called me up and said, "Listen, would you like to come over? We're looking for writers." And it was $100 a week, and you just wrote whenever you felt like. And boy, $100 a week at that time, I'm going, oh, I am cooking now.
What year would have that been?
Oh, man, about 66, 67, somewhere in there. Yeah. One of the first people I met there was a guy named Michael Martin Murphey. Whose real name was Travis. No, I'm sorry, that's his real name. His stage name was Travis Lewis.
At that time.
Yeah, because he was in a group called the Lewis and Clark Expedition. So everybody had to have a name.
Right.
So anyway.
That was his hook.
So that was the first day there, and Murph and I found out that we'd both gone to North Texas. We became friends, started writing. And we wrote around the clock. I mean, he had a camper that he would bring and park in front of my house, and we would just write, for days.
Wow.
And one of the songs we wrote during that period was Wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after that, we wrote a rock opera called The Ballad of Calico that we wrote for Kenny Rogers in the first edition. So we did a bunch of stuff together. And I recorded a demo for Warner Brothers at Wildfire, which didn't do anything. Says a lot about my singing. And so I didn't even think about it. And about 5 years later, Murph calls me up, and he's at Caribou Ranch in Colorado.
Right.
And he said, we're getting ready to record Wildfire. I said, oh, you're kidding, man, that's great. So he sent me a copy of it. A few weeks later, I thought they really did an excellent job on it. And all of a sudden, it started getting some airplay. And I remember I was driving on the San Diego freeway I was living at Palos Verdes at the time. And it was on KHJ, what at the time was the top, top 40 big hit station in L.A. And if you were on there, you knew you had a hit.
Right.
So I'm driving along the freeway, and all of a sudden I hear it come on. I went, oh, my God. And as I'm listening to it, I look over next to me, and there's a carload of teenage girls.
Right.
And I saw them together mouthing the word Wildfire. And I will never forget that power. I felt like, oh, this is a hit.
Yeah. And it had been many years since you wrote it, so it was.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't even thought about the song.
Right.
Yeah, so it's funny how those things happen.
Well, I have to laugh because we like to listen to a radio station that plays some of the 70s songs, and about once every couple of days they play that song, and your famous line is, I love it, and we all say it in the gallery, Larry just made 5 cents.
That's right. Yes, yes, indeed. It added up over the years, thank goodness. But
yeah, and so, but the music industry really changed, right? I mean, you were killing it doing songs like this, and you were doing a lot of commercials too, right?
Oh, I did a ton of commercials.
I mean, you did some that were airing on Monday Night Football, right? Like,
yep, we had one time on. That's back when the commercials were 30 seconds long. Now they're 15s.
Right.
And my partner and I, Don Pystrup, we were watching Monday Night Football. This was back when Dandy Don and Howard Cosell. This was like the show.
This is everybody watches.
Yeah,
it was the
only go-to show.
Right.
You know. So at the end of the first commercial break, we had the last two, and we're going, wow, that was cool. The next commercial break, we had all four.
All four.
Yeah, and they were like American Airlines, Ford, Chevy, Pepsi, Coke, McDonald's. I mean, you know.
Right. And you would do the jingle, right?
Yeah, we would write the jingles. And I have one that's still out there. Along with Wildfire, I co-wrote the In-N-Out Burger song. That's,
Well,
that's
tell us a
still
little
played.
bit about it. Go ahead.
Oh, well, my friend Gary White, who was the bass player in the Larry Cansler Trio in Deer Park, Texas, where we were in high school, he wrote Linda Ronstadt's first hit, I Think I'm Gonna Love You for a Long, Long Time.
Yeah, wow.
So 2/3 of the Larry Cansler Trio had #1 hit records. I think the agency brought the family in who owned In-N-Out Burger.
Right.
They were just getting ready to franchise.
Yeah.
And Gary...
Should have bought into that one.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. Gary, just a great writer and funny guy, and still has that old Texas accent, talks like that. And they came in and said, well, we have a slogan. And Gary said, what's that? And they said, taste homemade. And Gary said, I think I can do better than that. So he sat there on his little pad and went, okay, here you go. In and out. That's what a hamburger's all about. So occasionally you'll walk into the In-N-Out Burger and you'll see that in neon. And I go, I was there when I saw it written on a legal pad.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah, you forget the strength of music, the power.
And words.
Oh, absolutely. All of it together. Yeah.
And do you get anything for that now?
No,
that's just...
Don't even get a break on the hamburger. No, I'm just a bug in the windshield when it comes to that.
Isn't that funny?
That's how it works.
But it'll always be there.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think that kind of stuff is fascinating. So you have this career now, very successful commercial writer. But then the music industry changes with the synthesizer, right?
Very much, and that's what really got me, because it took away the orchestra and the spontaneity. Now, I'm really dating myself, but I'm really proud that when I did my first big sessions, we still did everything live.
Right.
Back that session that you and I put together, that was so rare. Remember that we had trouble finding people who could mic it live.
Wow! And so the session, we'll just tell people because it's very interesting. I learned a lot. Is that you and I don't remember if you may have brought it to me, but Ed Mell, who I represent as an artist and you love as a painter and really respect him, you wanted to do a composition to his paintings.
Exactly. I wanted to score it like a Western movie.
Which you did. You did 2 of them.
Yeah.
And we went out to to L.A.
Capitol
and
Records.
I went to Capitol Records, which was very fascinating to
Yeah.
see. And you got all these old, great players
Mhm.
set up, and Ed came out.
Yep.
You watched the whole thing. And it was at that point watching you that I go, oh my God, I had no idea he was so good. Because, I mean, you don't know. I had no idea. I mean, watching you control that group of musicians with just precise ability, it was awe-inspiring, quite frankly.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, it was really amazing. And tell some of the people that were in that room.
Well, there were guys that I had just worked with for years.
Yeah.
You know, Harvey Mason, the drummer.
Right.
You know, worked with everybody. You know,
Right.
and I say Chuck Berghofer for years was Sinatra's bass player. I mean,
Right.
just this level of musicianship. The thing that I think there's two things that would always make me tear up, and if I was doing a variety television show, and I've got a headset on, I can hear the cues from the booth,
Right.
and then also hear the orchestra as well. But you'd be standing there, and you'd hear the director, you know, giving all the commands to the, you know, all the cameras to roll in and everything, and get ready for action. And then every time they would say stand by music, I would just be all goosebumps. And they'd go cue music, and I would give a downbeat for a
Right.
tempo. And it never failed to just blow me away. And then doing movie
Why
scores.
is that? Is it because of the music that was playing?
Just because I wanted to do it so much, and I thought, and it is, you cannot believe how exciting it is. And the same thing, even more exciting, is doing a movie score, where you've got the orchestra in front of you, and in the back of the sound stage is this giant screen. So you're watching the movie as you're conducting, but you're hearing the music that you just wrote, played by the finest musicians on the planet.
And that's really where you got the idea for the Ed Mell,
Yeah.
was having done movies. that
Basically,
you could
we
see-
miniaturized
Yeah.
a movie score
You could
session
see
for
his
that.
paintings and those inspiring you to make music.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're going to play some of that music on this podcast at the beginning
Excellent.
and on the end.
Good.
And Larry and I still sell the CDs. I
There
think.
you go.
They're like $15 with the images and
Yep.
the music. And we're thinking about 2040 we might break even.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're
We'll get our
we're shipping
nickel.
away at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Thank God we enjoyed doing it.
Well, it was fascinating. It was really
Oh,
fun.
it was fun for me, and I just sort of had a sense that we wouldn't be doing, not necessarily you and I, but that kind of scoring is pretty much not done
Yeah.
in L anymore. Once the multi-tracking came in,
Mm-hmm.
it became so much easier to separate everything and do what we call a click track, which is basically a digital metronome that musicians hear in their ear, and there's no tone to it, so it doesn't throw their ear off. But it's like, you know.
Sure, that was good on radio.
Yeah, I'm sure we just blew that.
Yeah.
But they're listening to that sort of thing, so everything is in sync. So you might walk in, and here's the woodwind players just sitting there just playing their part.
Oh, I see.
But they're not all there together.
Oh.
And now it sounds great. And from an engineering standpoint, it is great because you have the separation and you
Oh, I
can mix
see.
it and make it clean. But from a musical standpoint, it was just so sterile to me because I love the idea of everybody being there.
Yeah.
You
no.
know,
and there is something about them feeding off each other.
Oh,
I
of
think,
course.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the pressure.
Yeah. That's
You
right.
don't want to be the guy or girl who blows a 7-minute take
Right.
with 30 seconds to go.
Right. Which
with
happens, I'm sure.
50 of your best friends right
Yeah.
next to you.
Going, you got to
Because you only do that a couple of times, and all of a sudden the phone stops
Right.
ringing. At least it used to be that way. So I miss that. There was an adrenaline rush that always.
I could see it.
Yeah.
Because you went to a different place when you were directing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're become a part of it. To me, the
Right.
orchestra was always just a giant instrument.
It is.
You
Right.
know.
Yeah. And you're the.
And I
you're
love
playing it.
sitting at home and writing the score out. That was always fun because I knew what it was going to sound like.
Right. Now, you have written just zillions of songs. I've watched you. I've actually worked with you. We've even done our own little song, which I'm still waiting to
Oh, yes.
Get my royalties on.
That's true. So am I. I guess we'll have to record it.
Oh, yeah.
It's not doing
if
anything,
there's anybody
sitting on the
out there-
piano.
If anybody wants it, we have it available.
There you go.
But
yeah.
composition and writing music
Hmm.
is very similar to painting
Absolutely.
in your mind for sure, because now
Yeah.
that's the other part I really want to go into is the next part of your life, which is as an artist. And you've done the painting, you've done the flying, you've done a lot of things, but somehow you've come back now as an artist, and you're a very good artist.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's to watch the progression you've made is really fun to see. But tell people how composition and writing music is similar to painting.
Well, to me, you can break it down into little sections, and I would say basically concept, form, color, which would be orchestration, and execution. So if you broke it down like that, so when I would write a piece of music, my first thought would be, what kind of mood do I want to create? You know, and that would kind of determine the type of ensemble, the size of it. Of course, the budget had a lot to do with that too.
Right.
But
Same
my first
with painting, though, right? I mean, big canvas, small canvas.
well, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and what do I want to create?
Right.
You know, so then once I think of, you know, in music, like I say, I'm going to come up with, you know, with emotion, feeling, that sort of thing. Okay, what is the form of it? Well, it's going to be how many minutes long. There's going to be a interesting, exciting section to start, then maybe a sort of a melancholy, and then a big finale or whatever, you know. In a painting, am I going to create a mountain scene or a sunset? Or I love to paint clouds, as you know. You know, so how do I go about it? How do I arrange the clouds? Whatever. And when it comes to color and music, that's the orchestration. Do I use woodwinds? Do I use brass? Do I use whatever? Well, the palette on my on my painting. Do I want warm? Do I want a cool setting?
And have you thought about this before you put the first brush to canvas?
Kind of loosely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm learning more and more as I'm painting to make my my sketch on the canvas itself more and more detailed all the time, because I would find myself getting into trouble. I'd literally paint myself into corners and have no way to get it out of it. So.
And you could do that in music as well?
Well, yeah, because my sketches in music are very, very detailed.
Right.
And then when I go to orchestrate, I would write a 4-staff sketch. I would start with a two staff that looked like I wrote it with my feet, because I'm writing so damn fast, because I'm just trying to, well, you've seen me write. I go at the speed of light.
Right.
And so no one can read that first sketch,
Right.
because it's just this crazy, insane person wrote it down.
Right.
So now I break it down into what would look like a master piano part. And then I put it up on the score pad. And you've seen my scores. They're like,
Right.
what, 3 feet tall
Right.
sometimes,
That's right.
with like, how many staffs on there.
Right.
So when I kind of use that concept when I'm making a painting. Now I'll make some sketches on a sketch pad, then I'll block it on my canvas, and then get more and more into the detail before I ever start putting the colors in. And then learning from people like Ed and some of the great people that you've introduced me to, I start blocking in my tones, my darks, my lights. So
And
to me, it's very similar.
do you find one harder or easier than the other?
Well, for me, music is easy because I've been doing it forever. I started writing when I was about 14.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, that's like riding a bike.
Right.
So now I'm happy to say that I'm still learning as a painter. And I remember in music, especially at North Texas, where I would pass something out to a band, and it would just be so god-awful. I'm trying to find a place to hide. But
Right.
all of a sudden, maybe 4 bars worked. I went, whoa, what did I do there? So make a note of that. That worked.
Right. And you
So-
knew that when they played it.
Yeah. Well, no, I knew it when I'd hear it. I
Yeah,
thought it was
right.
going to work.
Yeah.
And then when it did, oh, man, that really worked.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I think over the years, you just start building up this database
Right.
of things that work. So
Right.
now I'm starting to see that happen. I've told you this. Now and then I'm starting to see what I thought I was going to see when I started.
Right. Paint-wise.
Yeah, exactly. And so not all the time, but I keep pushing, because I've always felt that in music, and now I feel that as a painter, that if it doesn't scare you, you're not doing it right. You have to just keep pushing. So.
And have you gotten to that point where you go, oh, this isn't any good, scrape all the time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, constantly. I'm throwing less away, so that's good.
Yeah. And I think for artists out there and musicians or writers, whatever, you have to be able to scrape. I mean, I know
absolutely.
As a writer, I know that you can always make more words. Don't fall in love with something you've written because it may just be you are in love with it. It really doesn't work for
Well, you can get into where you're almost hypnotized what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll sit there and go, is this melody working or what?
Right.
And you talk about model airplanes. I've always got a model out in the garage.
Yeah.
So I get to a point in writing where I close the piano lid, go out and play with an airplane for half an hour, work on a wing or something. Right. Come back in, sit down and play the melody, and I can tell you in a nanosecond whether it's working or not.
You know why I think that is you let your subconscious do all the work.
Exactly.
While you're doing, a task that's more rote, and your mind's working, but you're focused elsewhere.
Yeah, you're completely clearing your head.
Yeah, and I think you can do that when you're sleeping too. I do that.
Oh yeah.
Especially if I'm writing a novel, I'm really into it. I put it down at night. I think about the novel as I fall asleep, and then the next day it's just there. Your brain has worked it out, and I think that's good for not only writing and music but art too. If you're out there making art, and you hit a block, do something else, come back to it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've heard over and over from artists, and you probably can maybe voice the same thing, is that you can't wait for inspiration.
Oh no. I think I've told you this. One of my musical heroes is Igor Stravinsky, and I found out when I was studying composition with Dr. Adler that Stravinsky was a 9 to 5 writer. He got up in the morning and had his breakfast, sat down and wrote till noon.
Right.
Had lunch, took a nap. And woke up and wrote till about 5 and closed the lid.
Yeah.
And the reason was that you didn't wait to be inspired. It's a job.
Right.
And I did that the whole time I was writing.
Right.
And now I work, when I'm painting, I do the same thing.
Yeah. And it's not to say you can't be inspired when you're in that 9 to 5, and hopefully you are.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's points in time you go, oh my God, that's just fantastic. I'm so happy with that. And other times you're at a loss for what to do. But I think it is important for people to realize that if they're going to be an artist of any type, don't wait for inspiration.
Oh, no, you can't. That thunderbolt doesn't even know you're around.
Yeah. No, and if you think you're wrong.
Like you say, thinking of it as a profession, it doesn't necessarily become rote, but you don't have to reinvent yourself constantly. You've got the energy, and you've got the rhythm, your own personal rhythm in doing it. And now, I'll do the same thing you do. When I wake up in the morning, first thing I do is go in there and flip the light on the easel and look at it. And I can tell you if it's working or not. And if it's not, I now know how to correct it. Before, I just go, oh, the hell with it, and just start another one.
Right.
But now I go, no, you need to put some contrast in the clouds or whatever, You've got to,
And just for people who might not know, you're doing... Your main thing is landscapes and things that you've experienced a lot. Almost, you're not doing plein air really.
No, I don't. I don't like to do plein air, which probably a lot of other artists would disagree. In fact, I don't like to call myself an artist, but that's another story.
Have you sold paintings?
Yes.
Then you're an artist.
Thank you. But plein air to me, I don't like to paint fast because I had to write so fast in the studios.
Right.
And even when I do workshops, it's like I learned so much from the instructor, but I had to paint that fast for me. It's like, no, it's not what
Well, you have to learn your speed.
Exactly.
And I think all good artists do this. I've gone out painting, not me painting, but me doing photography and watching my artists paint. And it's very interesting that they all have their own rhythms. And if you go with Terry and John Moyer's painting, John will knock out 2 by the time Terry does. And it's just the way John works.
Yeah.
They're both equally great. Terry's always going, wow, I wish I could do 2 that fast. But when you look at them, they're different. He's much looser. She's much tighter and more
Mhm.
literal. They're fantastic. But the reality is that you have your own speed of whatever
Right.
it is, and don't. If you're trying to go, I can't do enough. It's really irritating. And I see this for certain artists that I literally categorize them. This guy's slow, this guy's fast, this
Mhm.
guy's ultra fast.
Yeah.
And I have to learn what their rhythm is and expect that as a dealer, that I'm only going to get so much
Exactly.
from.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and that's okay. You need to know that going in.
Right.
And that's a good thing, I think, if you work with a dealer. As an artist, that you let them know, okay, I'm not the fastest, but
Mhm.
I'm consistent. And
Right.
as a dealer, I really care
You
about.
know what you're.
And I care more about consistency than numbers.
Of
I want
course.
the best.
Right.
And not all dealers are like that. Now, so you've become an artist. You're selling art online. And,
Right.
and so tell people about that process, because you started from ground zero,
Right.
not really knowing anything, to how did you get to that point where now you're making actual sales and doing pretty well, I think.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no one's more surprised than I am.
Yeah.
But it's
No, your wife is.
it's funny because I kept thinking when I got into art, I said, well, I'm going to take another perfectly good hobby and screw it up and try to make money with it.
Yeah.
But I'm on artspan.com
Right.
and sachiart.com.
Right.
And I'm just getting ready to fire up larrycansler.com again and start putting my paintings
And
on
will your
there.
music be available there too as well? or you
I don't know. No, probably not.
Yeah.
We can do our Ed Mell thing.
Right, put that
in
up there. Would
You
you
bet.
please?
Yeah.
I want my $15 cut.
You got it. One thing interesting, the whole time I was active in the studios, I couldn't listen to music.
That is very interesting.
Because when Lynn and I were first together, we went to a party, and it was all studio musicians. And she went, there's no music here. I said, we hear music all day long. We are so tired of it.
Right.
And it's not that we didn't care, it's that musicians, first of all, as a composer, there's no such thing as background music.
Mm-hmm.
Your ear is
Right.
there.
Right.
And because you're trained to listen analytically, so.
Yeah, it's different. Like
Yeah, so
watching
you
a
get-
movie. If you're a director or
it'll
producer or
drive
an
you
actor,
nuts. Yeah.
you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, you missed the beat.
Yeah.
Blah, blah.
Yeah, musicians will go, did anyone tell the clarinet player to tune up?
Right.
I mean, that sort of thing,
Right.
which my wife is thrilled when people are like that. But now that I'm painting, I find that I play music and I enjoy it.
And is it background music in the sense, or is it?
No, I'm
or
still
does it flow
listening
with,
analytically,
yeah.
but it's fun. A lot of people that are friends of mine, like Foreplay and groups like that.
Right.
And people I worked with, my favorite composer now is Dave Grusin, and I remember him back from the studio days. And so, but I find that I really just have a good time hearing music when I'm.
Do you think it helps you paint?
Oh, I think it does.
Because I know a lot of artists that have to have music on or noise or something, and it does actually help them, to be able to
I
do
think it would help for many reasons, but one was it blocks out everything else. I mean, we're so inundated by news and media that, when I go up in my little front room there in the house, close the door, turn the music on, and paint, I'm in another world.
Right.
Yeah,
when I write, I like to have music on, but I want it to be blues or jazz.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it helps. I think you're right. I think it blocks other things out.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
I cannot put on songs that I really like.
Right.
Because it takes me out of the mode of writing.
Well, and I would think writing the way you do, hearing lyrics would throw your head off a little bit.
Yeah, it could.
You're hearing words, and I go, whoa, hang on.
Though occasionally I will incorporate a song, not occasionally, I in fact do it kind of regularly, a song into the plot twist or in part of it. And if I listen to it over and over and over again, the song, it really does put me on a path that I go, oh, and so when I'm writing,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, I don't listen to the music so much, but I can hear it in my head in the background as I write the scene.
I can see that, yeah.
So I think these interdisciplines are important, and people should, maybe if you're an artist or beginning artist, embrace some of these things.
Yeah, you should experiment and find what works for you. I know when I'm painting clouds, I'm back in my glider pilot days.
Going through them?
Yeah, I'm around them. You don't want to
Yeah.
go through them in a glider. It'd be
See, I
the
don't know.
last
Oh,
thing
yeah.
you do.
Okay.
You'd be on the 6 o'clock news.
Yeah.
The guy who wrote the In-N-Out Burger song. But no, because especially as flying gliders, your power is finding air that's going up faster than you're going down. Gliders are always going down.
I see. Yeah,
So you have to find rising air. So you watch how the clouds are being formed around you.
Right.
So when I'm painting them now, I paint them from the inside out. I paint them sort of a dark gray, and they work my way out to lighten them up. But I also am trying to see where the energy level is and how they peak and all that sort of thing. So
That gives you a huge advantage, in my opinion, as a artist, that you have been in these and understand them.
you know what clouds do look
Right.
like. And they do have a certain form that, they're not, every cloud is total, there's never two that's ever been exactly the same. But the form and the things that make them happen are pretty similar. And that's what you're looking for as a glider pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm painting now, I'm able, if there's a mountain ridge on the right side of my canvas, I can kind of visualize where the wind's coming from and how there might be some turbulence downwind or some high cirrus up there that would form it and that sort of thing.
And that allows you to build the cloud imagery as you know it should be.
Absolutely.
And it's funny, as an art dealer, I look at clouds. Very important. I can tell if somebody's a really great painter.
Jeff Ailing.
Pete
Nails 'em.
Nesbitt,
Yeah.
Ed Mell.
Yeah, Ed, absolutely. And Ray Roberts,
Ray Roberts.
and I
And
love
the list-
Dennis Zeminski's
And the
Skies.
list goes on and on.
Yeah,
And part of that, and these are all, the people you mentioned are all artists in my gallery.
right.
But one of the reasons that when I see somebody who can paint a cloud, to me that it means you can paint. Cloud, water, hands, those are things that I see that I recognize as being a skill set that you can fake the rest, but you can't fake those. And I hadn't thought about why it is so, but I'm sure that they do. They whether they do it innately or like yourself, actually understand the dynamics of clouds. They're using that skill set, knowing that, there wouldn't be this kind of cloud or this kind of formation.
Right.
And so have you ever just painted just clouds, nothing else?
I've got a couple that I have,
Yeah.
and I find that I need a horizon as sort of visual base.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you mention that because I'm thinking very soon of doing some more just from the perspective of clouds themselves.
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting. And something else you might try, which I'd love to see, is painting them from above, looking down.
Yeah.
I don't know of anybody who really does that, honestly.
Some of the people who do some of the great aviation
Oh, yeah, there you
illustration.
go. I don't handle it.
But there's always an airplane in there. I've never seen one where there's just, I'm sure there are some where there's just clouds and
I would
maybe a
think
hint
that
of
would
terrain.
work in a great big format too.
Well,
like
I would
huge
think any
format.
good cloud thing has got to be a fairly good size canvas,
So what's next for Larry Cansler?
Oh, I just want to keep learning everything. I'm constantly, I've never been bored in my life, If I find something I like to do within a month, I've got $600 worth of books on it. My poor wife goes, "Oh God, now what's he into?"
Well, I think Lynn, your wife, is great because she does support you, just like mine does.
You're
too,
right.
that it's important to have those people that will,
she's my biggest fan.
that will back you.
Yeah.
And without those kind of support systems, it makes it much harder.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, very fortunate. And so are you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I can sit here and not sell art. I can just sit here and talk about it, which I find to be very much enjoyable. Now, tell me, is there anything you want to share with me, or anything we didn't cover, that would be, those deep, dark secrets that no one knows about?
Not really. I'm just at a stage in my life where I think I'm really reflecting a lot now.
And I think that's important for people to realize, is that you hit, I won't give your age because you look so young, but you're getting a little bit older. Does that change things when you get to an age like over 70?
Yeah, it does, and not necessarily in a bad way. I decided once to make a list of all the bad decisions I had made.
Wow.
A few weeks later, I decided it'd be a lot easier to make a list of the good decisions that I made. I could do that in about 20 minutes,
Right.
you know. But I've been pretty critical of myself and things that things I think I could have done better.
Yeah.
But I think all in all, I think I've just tried to experience as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm my own biggest critic, as you know. And but I think I just want to just keep going and keep learning. I think when you stop learning, man,
Right.
just forget it. It's all over.
So did you make that list of the things that were?
I ran out of paper.
Yeah. Okay. At some point, you realize this is actually one of the things. That's
Yeah,
a mistake.
yeah, exactly. That was my biggest mistake was going into
starting
this
it.
stupid list. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think there is something to be said for retrospective and looking back,
Oh, yeah.
and you know, trying to maybe not make certain turns that you did. But I know for me, I just go, hey, if it was a mistake or if it was something that didn't work out, I don't worry about it. I never think about those kind of things. You can't relive them.
No.
You can't change them. The only thing you can change is the future. And
Exactly.
and you know, and you focus on that. And for individuals, and I see this in art too, and you're a great example, in my opinion, of somebody who's really doing something special as an artist in the last quarter of their life, and can make it for fun if they want, which
Mhm.
I think kind of maybe started out that way, and then you realize, hey, wow, it's good enough that this is actually, I can be in galleries, which you know, if you're not there yet, Larry's available to be in a gallery, and he's good enough. I can assure you, you are good enough to be in any good gallery, and but not to be afraid to try something new creatively.
Oh, absolutely.
You know. Because you could still be writing music and being very successful at it if you wanted, but you've really just kind of moved to another plane, right?
Yeah, my heart really wasn't in it after the orchestras died out.
Yeah.
Because I'm still an orchestra guy.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, you've seen me. I'll sit at the piano and have a glass of wine and play the jazz ballads, but that's about all the music I'm writing now.
Right.
But my goal now is to really just paint, because I think I've been sort of given another chance to learn something new.
Mm.
And it really is very satisfying. It's frustrating too, but that's a part of the game.
Right.
You know.
And keep doing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
That's really the biggest part, is just do it. I mean, there's so many things that you can only learn so much out of, like a workshop or a book. You know, playing the piano, flying airplanes, painting. You can only read so much. At a certain
Right.
point, you got to put your butt in the seat and do
Right.
it, you know. And that's what I'm doing now. I stand in front of an easel all day long, and
Right. Do it.
yeah, exactly.
Nike had something there. I
Yeah,
think.
I think
And
so.
it's true. If you don't do it, you're not gonna know, and it's okay to fail.
It's not only is it okay to fail, I think it's very important to fail.
I agree.
Because
You learn
in
from
music,
mistakes.
I learned more from, like I said, there were times I wanted to crawl away from an orchestra that was so awful what I just heard.
Right.
You know, but the only way you can do it, you've got to get back there and just keep doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and pretty soon it starts to work.
Yeah. And then you become a Larry Cansler.
I'm not quite sure what that is. I don't have any choice, though.
And on that note, I think we can just wrap it up and listen to the beautiful music that Larry Cansler has provided for us. Thank you, Larry, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank
and
you.
I'm looking forward to seeing your next painting.
So am I.
All right.
Thanks, buddy.
Larry Cansler, thank you.
Okay.